Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Yes. Today we have Christian Moeller. He is from UCLA, and he's going to be showing some of the work that he's done over the past, 15 years. And just kind of one note, I don't know how many of you know Joy Mountford, but she was a boss of mine when I worked at Apple. And the way that we were trying to think of some different schools to work with for the Design Expo, and she was sort of listing off a bunch of places, and when she got to UCLA, she said, there's always the wonderful Christian Moeller. And ever since she said that, I've been dying to find out more about the school and the program, and just have also been hearing from multiple different places about UCLA and the work that these guys have been doing. So welcome, Christian, and feel free to ask questions and chat and make it interactive. Thanks.
Thank you, Lily. I'm not talking so much about the UCLA today. Probably I won't even mention it. And one reason is that I moved to the United States only a little more than 3 years ago. And most of the things I'm going to show you is what I did with my studio in Germany for many years. By background, I'm from architecture, trained as an architect, also practiced as an architect in a very successful German architecture firm called Bänische Partner. They were responsible for the famous Olympic Stadium in Munich, for the House of Parliaments in Germany, and many other projects. And then I left the architecture world for various reasons, but probably one very obvious reason was that working on an architectural ambitious project takes something between 4 years if it's fast and up to 15 years if it's a little slower, and I need to have my things accomplished in smaller periods of time because I lose interest very quickly on things. And the other reason, architecture is a tough business, meanwhile. Beautiful profession, but really tough. And that creates this side effect that architects are hanging out with other architects. They meet each other basically at university, then they start kissing, they become couples, they get babies, they become architects as well. So it's all architects hanging out with architects, and that was a far too small world for me. And by let's say understanding this, I was looking out for something new. And at that time, computer graphics was, at the end of the 80s, was the most challenging thing. Seeing that very exclusively with these 3D goggles, Silicon Graphics was the company, and I was kind of intrigued to know more about that, and that brought me into this field. Then, funny enough, I didn't do many things with 3D graphics. And here, a very early work I did as an example. It's a mirror. Was invited to a gallery show in the very last minute, and put that together with what we found in my basement, flying around as materials. Put that together in 3 days. I mean, invited to the show, and the opening was 3 days later. So that's what we came up with. It's a mirror. When you approach the mirror, your image disappears. Or with other words, it's a mirror where you can see yourself only from a distance. For some reason, it never turned into a successful product, but I still like showing it once in a while. I think you get the point. Huh? Sorry. I did a lot of sound installations then. Also because I quickly realized that doing sound installations, it's much cheaper than making 3D computer graphics installations with these damn expensive silicon graphics machines. And then I got this expertise with the sound installation, and I made more and more, and then some people almost thought that I'm doing only sound installations, what's wrong? And I got then an interesting, how you call it? You're going down a road and then there's a side street. Through this commission from the Mozart Museum in Vienna, it's the original apartment of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, where he used to live for many years and where he has created the most significant part of his body of work. The opera de Figaro was made there. And the city turned this apartment into a museum. And the architect Elsa Prohaska created these beautiful ghost kind of furnitures as displays for the exhibition. And they invited me to contribute an artwork into that context. And that, I mean, you get such an invitation, you're honored to get it, right? And I had no clue why they asked me and what I could meaningfully contribute to that context. Why do they need an artwork there? I couldn't see that. And, but I didn't want to give up. And so I found then an interesting problem to work on. And the problem was that, to my opinion, the most important documents in the exhibition were the handwritten musical scores of the artists. And more than 90% of the visitors can't read music, so I found that an interesting problem. Took such a sheet, original sheet, Opus 154 for piano, little piece he has written for a piano student he had, and I put it behind a sheet of glass with metal coating and a capacitive touch sensor system connected to it, and now you could touch the note on this original document and you could hear it through loudspeakers displayed, or wiping along these scores, you could sequence the melody backwards or forwards. By saying this backwards and forwards, of course, it came then, I mean, you start, everybody's excited, then the first people show up with the concerns, and then you have this mess where nobody knows anymore if this is an appropriate thing to do or not. And I invited, let's say, the experts of classical music or the heritage of the city of Vienna in music. I invited them together for a meeting, hoping that we find an answer if we can do this in such a museum or we better should not. And the head of the Wiener Musikverein, this is, let's say, the top of the hierarchy, was an old man, about 90-something years old, very skinny, tall man. Spent his whole life on classical music. And after the discussion was already going on for more than half an hour, he came up and he said, well, not sure if there is an answer, a real answer to these questions, because he had the feeling it's all about opinions. But let's face it that way. If Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is sitting in heaven, looking down right now into his former apartment, and then seeing such an installation surrounded by a bunch of Japanese tourists playing this music backward and forward, but for sure always in the wrong speed, how would he like to see this image? And we all concluded he would love this image a lot, and so took that as an excuse to continue on the project. So with other words, for a Brahms museum, we probably would have stopped it. We would not have done it. So I showed that example because since then I don't have any hesitations anymore to do some works which are, let's say, less art-driven, which have more a didactical approach, as long as I find it important enough to spend my time on it. And here another one, what goes that direction. It's, you see, the church there is the Paulskirche, Paul's Church in Frankfurt, Germany. And this is, that was the first House of Parliament in 1848 under President Heinrich von Gagern. That was the time of German Revolution. Didn't go very far. After a few years, they put half of them in prison, or at least the democracy went back to monarchy. But it was an important day for the nation to celebrate in 1998, 150 years of German parliamentarism. And they made a humongous exhibition on that. Close to the end, the director, Helmut Seemann, of this museum, he came to my studio and he told me about the exhibition, and he invited me to do an outdoor installation for them, 24 hours accessible, because he was scared that the theme, German history of German democracy or parliamentarism, is a kind of it's a little dry, right? And he was scared that he ends up only with school kids brought in buses by teachers. And to avoid that, he wanted to have a kind of a propaganda piece in front of it, what shows a little bit of irony on the topic, because the exhibition was indeed much better than you would expect, the exhibition inside. And so that's what I did then. I made this forest of steel poles, and the name of German politicians are engraved into these steel poles. All of them are touch sensitive, and when you touch one of these guys, he starts immediately talking. When several people are touching more of these poles at the same time, then they all talk together and gets into sort of, depends on the density, kind of cacophony. And then kids are playing it differently. They are not so interested about what politicians have to say. They played it more like a rap instrument. Guten Morgen, meine Herren, meine Herren, meine Herren. They played music with this. So it was kind of a neat thing. 30 of the politicians were contemporary politicians. The other 30 politicians were from the first House of Parliament 150 years ago, because the coincidence brought it in that the guy who invented stenography, the short form writing, was a guy from Frankfurt. His name is Schulze, and he used this first House of Parliament as a laboratory to improve his new writing technique. And so that means every single word ever spoken in that place was recorded. And so we had actors then doing these speeches. And my goal here was to show in a funny way how rhetorics and language culture has changed over the period of time of 150 years. Because you might like politicians or you hate them, but one thing for sure, they are really, really convincing through speech. And they were in the past, and they are, even the contemporary ones, are stunningly convincing. And I mean, these experts in rhetorics, to see them talking in the same area with this big time, is interesting to see, because it tells you exactly what happened to your language over time. So playing with these politicians made it, of course, that they sooner or later all came there to see what I was doing. And so that brought me up on the horizon of these people. And I got a call out of the blue one day in the very, very early morning from the Museum of German History. And the director called me asking me if I would love to do something in this new dome built by Norman Foster on top of the German Reichstag, the House of Parliament in Berlin. And I said, oh, yes, I would love to. And he said, yes, but you have to do it you have to do a work on the third national symbol, expecting that everybody knows what the third national symbol is. I didn't. He explained it to me. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I was tired, and he gave me a lecture on these things. So the first national symbol, for the few here who do not know what it is the colors of a country. It's in Germany we have this flag. The second is this, how you say it, icon. Germans have an eagle, the Americans as well. And then number 3 is the national anthem. So they wanted me to do a sound installation in this dome with the German national anthem, because they knew that putting up loudspeakers is not an option, because that would be just embarrassing, right? Yeah. this most amazing space, and then you listen to the national anthem there all the time. That was kind of a tough one. Also, if you're familiar with architecture, Norman Foster, very famous, probably the most successful architect in the world, not the worst one, I have to say. You might criticize him, but he's for sure, he's the most powerful architect in the world. And putting some funny sculpture there in this dome would not have been an option, because he would just have vaporized me away. You know, so I had to be also invisible. I mean, even a loudspeaker would have been too much. He would not have allowed that. So what I came up with was then this plate. I wanted to put flesh into the concrete floor, maybe a plate like almost a gutter, out of better material like brass, having engraved the name of the national anthem, Das Lied der Deutschen by Haydn. But the plate should have, proposal was to have the plate sitting on feather springs. These are these very simple mechanical connectors, which you usually find wherever you have very heavy machines in a factory, to separate the vibration, to not getting the vibration into the building. So I wanted to have it sit on these feather springs, actuated by these very heavy-duty actuators from a sound cancelling system. The idea was to find a variation. That's the first prototype we built it, and here you see the inventor of this vibration technique. The idea was that we wanted to make a variation of the German national anthem in the frequency between 0 and 200 hertz. And then, because the plate is perforated and in vibration, it does not move any air. And that makes it completely 100% silent. You can't hear anything until the moment you step on that thing, and then you get the German national anthem vibrated into your body. And if you wish, you can close your ears, and then your skull becomes the resonance body, and you hear it with your inner ear. And then you hear the melody. And I had to present this proposal in the House of Parliament. Was a little more nervous than I'm today. And I thought that it's such a smart-ass concept that they will buy into it, and I was so proud of it. And I showed a lot of these pictures I just showed you, and concluded with the sentence, "This is a variation of the German national anthem, what moves you physically without creating any pathos." I found that so great. And they were throwing rotten tomatoes on my head. They found it so embarrassing, they went after me like crazy. And then for me was a new experience. You get beaten up by a guy who actually is really good in words, beats you up like crazy, and then you can't reply because you're on the speech list number 15. Yeah? You have to wait for another 14 guys beating you up, and after you don't know what to say anymore. Then the president stopped that whole thing, and he said, we want to have a vote on this, and I won it. Jesus, what was that? So nobody of these bastards who supported it gave me support. They just waited up. Why putting some effort into this? But then I never got the commission. So I don't know. That's how it works. A year later, I had a chance to realize it in London. But I used some electronic music, not the national anthem. And it is a permanent installation there, and worked quite well. Here, the original version of what I showed you with these politicians, in the first version, I built it just as a musical instrument. In a beautiful gallery in Aoyama in Tokyo, Spiral Art Gallery. And here a little video shows you a 1 to 10 model of this structure, which I've built it just for our composer, that he had something to place his sound elements spatially, that he could, I mean, he could have done it with a keyboard, of course, but he thought that it's much more interesting if he can work it out in a physical structure. And so that's what it was then before we shipped the whole thing to Japan. Music elements are made by Ludger Brümmer, amazing computer musician. On the right, you see my lighting director, Nathan Thompson, and on the left, our electronic engineer, Wolfgang Shemot. So in the daytime, you had the people wandering around in this sculpture, like in a forest, playing this musical instrument from the inside. And on top of this structure, there was a huge skylight. And after sunset, I had an additional thing set up. It was created by a huge amount of profile spotlights, all shining the same square, focused into the structure. And by touching the poles, I was just switching the light positions, creating these very beautiful light and shadow textures into the structure. Working with these interactive things for a longer time makes you learn a lot of things, and makes you also capable to react on unexpected surprises, which I've got here. In that case, the system worked that if you touch one pole, you got a sound element. If you touch two, we were transponding the overall audio experience on octave up or down. Worked absolutely great. Tried it out with a huge amount of people, because meanwhile we knew how to guarantee harmonic potential with not following just boring notation rules, and everything worked great. And the night of the opening, for the first time I was realizing, when there were all these people there, that all the people are touching two poles at the same time. And that screwed up our audio system badly. I mean, I was not happy at all. And that was so totally unexpected. We just skipped that problem before. And so what I did, I was running up into the office of the gallery, we were writing a little manual how to use this installation, what was kind of redundant because it was not so difficult to use it. Just if you touch it and make sounds, some totally redundant text. Printed it as many as we could, and then went down and handed it out to the people in the thing. And so they had one piece of paper in their hand, and then they walked that way. So that solved the problem for the first day. Last year I did it again. The sort of structure here for a work I did for the European Culture Capital Program. Every year, one town in Europe becomes the cultural capital of Europe. It's a beautiful thing. This last year it was Graz in Austria. And here this is related to an exhibition about the invention of the alphabet, basically. It's called the Tower of Babel. It celebrates the invention of the alphabet through the Babylonians. And in the courtyard of this beautiful castle, I built this structure. And here we are bringing down all languages we can receive via satellite on the northern hemisphere into this courtyard, and they are represented by these poles, and the name of the country of origin is then engraved into the pole, and when you touch it, you hear the live radio or state TV channel of this country. This installation was very expensive because to do these touch-sensitive things in outdoor conditions where it snows and rains makes it much harder, and we were preparing something like 3 or 4 years for that. And the day of the opening, the first bomb was falling onto Babylon. That was a crazy coincidence. And all of a sudden, the Pole of Iraq was the main attraction. All the people were standing around it, listening to some totally hideous propaganda music. and then the day after the opening became silent, never said a word again. Strange thing. This is a poll I did most recently in London. Probably the last one. I think I stopped now doing these polls. At least I reduced it already to just one. It's a show was invited to an art show on energy. And they asked me in particular that was the task, make this whatever energy sort of topic, turn it into a physical experience. And this is then what I came up with, called Do Not Touch. It also displays a little bit that I get more and more tired of interactive systems. There's not much to talk about. It's a pretty silly work. You just get electrocuted when you touch it. What made it kind of a physical experience was the first work I ever did where the paperwork was more expensive than the making of the thing. The liability thing was just crazy. I mean, the owner of the museum is the Queen of England, and she has a lot of equity. And we found a company then, when I turned it in, they all thought that I'm out of my mind, right? It's a good example how far you can get if you push hard enough. That's the responsible person from the museum for the safety issues said only over my dead body, and now he's working somewhere else. The company would finally, and I was not kicking him out. It just he was so against it but he couldn't survive. That was amazing. I had plenty of support by the director of the exhibition because he loved it so much, and they found for me a company like Halliburton, war supply private company, and they had experience with electrocuting people, I don't know, and they took all the responsibility. It was just a matter how much money they get paid for doing this. You know, it's insane. So now it's there, and kind of like it. This here is a teaser I made for this show in Tokyo. This part of Aoyama is where all the fashion people are located. Izumiyake, Yamamoto, Comme des Garçons are all there. And people are looking into shopping windows. And the gallery has also a huge glass facade to the sidewalk. And I installed it that way that people from the sidewalk couldn't see this display. It's kind of casting the shadow of the people who are passing by, right? But they saw people in the lobby of the gallery doing weird things, weird behavior for no reason. And that was my way to attract them, to make them curious to come in and to see what's going on. It worked quite well. These three girls were filmed by a hidden camera, and I like this sequence because I never put any tags or explanations on my work how to use them, usually. If this is not obvious in the first place, I rather don't do the work. And how people find out in a playful way what something does shows this sequence in a nice way. The guys immediately see video come up, boom, put the foot, figure it out, go home. The girls, they have a different approach. It takes them a while to find it out, and then they do it. And then another reason why I like it so much, I love Japan so much, and in my home country, people have this idea about Japanese people that they all have gray suits and they all look the same, and in reality is that they are the well-dressed people in the world, and they are so funny, and I love them so much. Well, I think you got it, right? That was my first work I did in Los Angeles, in my new hometown. And it was a commission I've got through Caltech, California Institute of Technology. They wanted me to do an artwork for them where I had to incorporate some of their research. I could do whatever I want, as long as I use one one thing what they are working with. And that was, of course, a great opportunity. And I went for emotion recognition. So you have to understand, when you come from a mid-sized town in Germany and all of a sudden you're in the middle of Hollywood, it can happen that you get a little overwhelmed by all these happy people and this omnipresent friendliness and all these smiling women. And so I casted actresses who were somewhat before in the newscaster business, and I made them smile into a video camera for as long as they could, up to 1.5 hours, continuous smile. And they were scrutinized by the computer system, and whenever the sincerity of their smile went under threshold, they got a little alert sound telling them they have to try harder to be happy. And here you see a little video of the making. It's an amazing piece of software. I'm the first one who ever used it. It's great. Software has seen, self-learning system has seen something like 2 million faces, meanwhile. So here you see these women smiling in the very first minute of the session. All happy. And then this one, her name was Natasha. I show her after 1.5 hours. Right before we stopped recording. Computer doesn't like her anymore. What is amazing, I mean, we are laughing, but I mean, none of us here in the room makes that thing silent for longer than 10 seconds. They can do that over hours. It's amazing. Look how exhausted she is and how she comes back. Look here. It's amazing. Chuck. So that's the difference between a normal person and an actress, I tell you. This is stunning. And then I had them displayed like this in the gallery, and there were this randomly appearing alert sounds from these 6 displays. What made it a kind of a little sad ambience. This is a work I did in Rio de Janeiro. I was invited for a show about virtual spaces or artificial spaces, something like that. And they expected me to do something with 3D graphics, of course. And I couldn't see myself shipping computers to Rio. I was not in the mood. And I wanted to turn indifferent space into, let's say, a very artificial or an alien world in a different way. And what I did, I designed these costumes. And they have a really strong lighting system inside, fluorescent lights. You see the little white sticks, they are the fluorescents. The black guys are just the ballast transformers. And the idea was, if I bring a light source so unnaturally close to the performer, that the performer becomes something like a lampshade, or like a walking lamp, that the performer carries the light out of her or himself. This should turn an indifferent space into something very weird. So this is just a photo shoot. You see the real thing in a second. And I created a kind of a shopping window situation, which was pitch black, everything black inside. And I had these fashion models walking around in a very simple choreography. And basically all you could see from these most beautiful women were the feet. And they have huge feet because they are so tall. And it made it a very poetic image. I had glass, of course, in between the audience and the performers to separate that more. And to me, that was a very successful artificial world. And you see that my work is not always very technology driven. There's no computer involved at all. Just that the very first of these fluorescent lights, we ripped it out of a notebook because it was the backlight system of a LCD screen.
Ter essa visão, né? Só dos pés. Virou como uma linha preta só os pés. E aí, de repente, elas abrem a mão e fica as figuras da parte de cima.
And the fact that you can't see anything, just the feet, so the people are, the bodies totally disappeared. Also made it a thing where you couldn't stop watching for some reason. It's like a little bit like when you do you know the magic of a fish tank? You're sitting in front of a fish tank, and after 1 hour you're still watching the stupid fish swimming around, and you can't stop watching. That was the same effect here. Here work again in Japan. It's kind of an artificial lake. It's a sound installation basically where I move a sound cluster. Which consists out of samples of micro-insects underwater, sampled by a very famous musician, David Dunn, from Santa Fe. I make that three-dimensionally moving around while I change the gradient of let's say, the light floor I scanned inside.
レーザー光線で作り出された光のフロアが一緒に傾き、また聞こえるでしょ。スピーカーから流れている。牛の声のようにも聞こえるし、川の流れのようにも聞こえるでしょ。こういう音も大きくなったり小さくなったり様々に変化していくんです。はい。
This visualizes the sound cluster. モニターに映し出された虫の大群のように見えるもの。And it follows a gravity model according to the gradient of the flora. 私の後を追うようにして動き出します。People came into this place. I mean, in Japan, they have the onsen culture. They love sitting in hot springs, and so they were sitting there with a white handkerchief on their head, sitting in the light for a long time. It was a very successful installation. Created a complete artificial smelling technology, sort of ambience, but so beautiful that it was able to compete with the beauty of nature. You know, that's what the goal is about, right? You can't do anything nicer than nature, but you can get very close. How would I explain that? You think about a beautiful landscape, mountain, most beautiful, gorgeous landscape, right? Sometimes you see these kind of setups, and there's a little windy road. And the little windy road makes it even more beautiful as it was without the windy road. Yeah, I'm not talking about freeways. I talk about the thing, what explains its purpose, and it becomes the perfect match. That's nice. This here is probably my most successful work I ever did. It is from 1994. Was called Electro Eclipse, ballet performance in Theater am Turm. At that time with the number one dancer in the world, Stephen Galloway. He was the first dancer of the Facade company. And I perforated the stage floor with light sensors. And his movements in the lights, casting shadow on the stage floor, were the information to conduct the electronic orchestra. So he was creating the music with his movements, and he was not dancing to the music. So he was the conductor of the instrument, right? On the right-hand side is Pete Namlock, the techno composer who made all the sound elements. In the center, Stephen Galloway. And that's how it looked like. It was playing in MTV forever. The record sold great. I even made it into the German school book with this thing. That's the few times in your career when you do the right thing at the right place at the right time. Because for sure there were other people before me who did these kind of experiments, and other people after me did these kind of experiments. I did it in exactly the right spot at the right time and got all the credits for it. Very good. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen all the time. If you do something too early, nobody cares about it. If you do it too late, then it's also a loss. Yeah. That's what I'm doing most of the time. How do we do this louder here? This is kind of music you want to hear really, really loud. Is there a way to bring the house lights a little bit down? Do we have such a thing? Maybe this button. Yeah, great. Just so. Yeah, so with the success of, am I on that microphone there? No. Yes, can you hear me now? Okay. Having the success with this theater performance, got a call from the city of Rotterdam, represented by V2. Asking me if I would be interested in doing such an installation like I did on stage in the museum park in Rotterdam. It's a famous park built by Rem Koolhaas, but for some reasons not very inviting at nighttime. People get scared, I don't know. Poverty, I mean all these urban problems, drug crimes, all that thing, makes people insecure, and that they don't go at nighttime in the park. And the question was, can we build an installation there to bring people into the park to make it a safer environment? And that's what I did. I built these scaffolding towers, put a huge hardwood floor into the park without having a ceiling on it. It's a very, very efficient thing. Build a hardwood floor outdoors without having a roof. People love it. It works great. I never had an opportunity again to do that in that scale, but I would immediately if I could. And then we perforated it with the light sensors, and then in the daytime, people were casting shadows on the sensors, and at night we had, I don't know, hundreds of aircraft landing lights around it to put light on the floor. And this is how it looked like. It became the meeting point of youth culture in Rotterdam during its time. And the interesting thing was we had regular guests. It was not like in a normal art event that you have your people coming and then next time other people. Here it was always the same people, but hundreds or over 1,000 every night. They made that their place. All inline skaters, what's the other thing? Skateboarders, they all were there every night. It was a nice thing. When I came to the site, I came relatively late because I think I had something in the United States, and I came pretty much last minute. I was looking around, and there was a kind of an ugly building not so far from there, and I asked her, what's in that building? And they said, oh, that's a hospital for, children's hospital for cancer patients. I said, oh, Jesus Christ, because this worked only really in ambience at night, when with the dark. And my experience from home would be next to a children's hospital, they're gonna put out your plug 8 o'clock in the evening. I mean, if you're lucky. Holland is different. Holland is a very, very civilized country. I mean, who has never been to Holland, I recommend it strongly. What they did, they put cushions in the windows, and the kids were sitting in the windows and watching what was going on there on this display. And everybody had great fun, and it was fantastic. Unthinkable where I come from. This is also one of my first works. It's a facade of a building. I did that in 1992. It's a facade of a very high-end shopping mall. What changes its color according to the outside weather conditions. The warmer it gets, the more yellow this facade appears, and these yellow clusters, determined by the temperature, are then moving along the facade in wind direction according to the wind speed. And here's a little
pick up the street sound waves and turn them into
little TV thing about it.
But that's only part of it. So with this project on the side of a building, you linked it up to temperature as well.
Yeah, we linked it up to weather conditions. We have a little weather station on the roof of the building that measures temperature, wind speed, wind direction, the rest light.
The building reacts to people and the weather via a computer program and a rooftop meteorological station channel. The information is fed to a wall of perforated aluminium shields and the quartz halogen bulbs and coloured filters behind it. Blue illustrates cold, yellow warm, and the direction of the pattern is determined by which way the wind blows. It's
Yeah, let me continue that way. Or shall I skip? How much time do we have? No, I think I can make that. Yeah. Here I want to complain a little bit about LED screens. We find them more often in our urban environments. Not very often you find them successful. First of all, they are always far too small because they're crazy expensive, and they never appear in the size they're supposed to appear. And if you take in reference the distance you need to have to see that in a decent resolution, it's not much bigger than the TV set in your living room. The other problem is when it's switched off, it looks kind of really ugly, that thing, because the surface is not supposed to be first surface of architecture. Yeah, you have all the dust in these modules, and I even don't start talking about the program, because I mean this is the dullest thing. I mean they are showing advertising 24 hours because they can't switch it off, corrupting these $1 million surfaces within a day. Nobody cares anymore what it displays, right? Because you know it won't give you any relevant any idea or information. Anyway, so it is a little bit like you would spend a hell of a lot of money for a TV set, what runs only one totally redundant, boring program, and there's no bloody switch to switch it off. Who would ever want to have such a thing, right? So I thought that needs to be changed, and and then I had this idea that I can invent a facade system for architecture, what is able to display information for the same price like a regular facade. I'm not a regular, but let's say an expensive curtain wall facade would need it. And I wanted to have it in bitmap graphics and the pixels, let's say architectural size, tile size. The idea that you have a building what has very regular, simple structures, like this thing I did for a sketch for a thing in Switzerland, like the house for Josephine Baker from Adolf Loos, black and white stripes, forever, for weeks, for months. It doesn't do anything. It just, nobody knows that it can do something unless something really relevant happens, and then all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, it turns into a text display, communicates its information for a while, then goes sleep again, maybe in a different pattern. So that was the kind of thing I had in mind. How these pixels are done, I showed that on video. And then I got the opportunity through the Ministry of Transportation in Germany. They commissioned me an artwork for their facility they had just built, responsible to maintain all the river sites in Germany where they have cargo on the rivers, the cargo ships. And that gave me the opportunity to develop this pixel idea one step farther. Even if it's a very small display surface. I rented a cargo ship and I made a trip from Prague in Czech Republic to Hamburg in the north of Germany, 800 kilometers, what is approximately 600 miles, with this cargo ship, recording the riverbanks with a digital recording system we developed for it, what writes the each frame, gives it the name of the global position where it's taken from. I don't know, a crazy amount of images we made during this 3-day trip. And then I wanted to have this passing by riverside of the river Elbe displayed on this low resolution sculpture like on a scanner, right? And this is the view how it looks like from the lobby of the building while you're waiting in front of the elevator. You have the Elbe landscape, so to say, superimposed on top of the existing landscape, passing by in the speed of a cargo ship. This shows you the translation into these low resolution pixels. They have a size of approximately 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch and a rate of 3 frames per second. And here a view into my studio in Frankfurt. I have these really brilliant people around me where I come in with this question, how can we change a surface from black to white, cheap and fast? And then they come up with all these really, really great ideas. And the favorite one we found was this, he called it Hydropixel. He has a silicone oil behind glass and he just moves a perforated metal plate forward and backwards, and that makes enough contrast to call it 1-bit information. This is my technical director, Sven Töne. He's a surgeon at the same time, what is interesting. In the daytime he works in a hospital in people's bodies. At night he makes these interesting things for me. The guy with the blue shirt is Ludger Brümmer, the composer who made the sounds for the work I showed in Tokyo in this audio grove. This forest. Here the first electromechanical prototype of this idea, and while we had it so far, we have realized that our money we had, the budget for this sculpture was not enough to develop that further, this pixel, and we had to fall back to a more, shall I call it simple, a more mechanical kind of pixel. So it's that guy here. There's a permanent magnet in the wing and 2 coils on the backside, and by changing polarity it moves by pushing and pulling the permanent magnet and makes it swing 180 degrees. Then here let's say the first garage version of it before it went into production. And here in the factory, this is like here, my friend Peter Carson came with me. He runs a facility in California, what is probably the greatest art fabrication facility in the United States. the equivalent to this company who built this sculpture for me. They can do everything. I mean, just the impossible is the only thing they don't have in their variety of things they are able to do. I show you work I'm working on right now with Peter for the city of San Pedro. San Pedro is the Los Angeles harbor, together with Long Beach, the 5th biggest harbor in the world. And driving, I mean, for the people who know the Los Angeles area, you have a lot of machines around. So these guys, they're sitting in the hills, digging, love these little, then these beautiful structures in the middle of the sea with all the lights. You have light towers, which are more on the romantic side. So this beacon light tower was then one idea I wanted to incorporate in that thing. This is the lighthouse in San Pedro. I found a website. It's interesting. You find all these lighthouses in the United States on the same website with all details about it, the material they are built, when they are built, and so it's very, very interesting. And then the other important thing in San Pedro are these guys, these cranes, container cranes, at a big industrial harbor, and they have millions of these guys. I can see them from my house in the Hollywood Hills on a clear day, and it's really far away. Can see them like little ants walking on the horizon. It's kind of neat. Well, so yeah, these cranes, huh? So I came up with the idea I want to do something with a robot. It's a welding robot called Fanuc 400 and something out of a car factory. Because, I mean, we have this tradition with robots in California. Some people made it really far with imitating a robot. I don't get tired of watching robots. Here, this little video out of a factory. The motion performance is so highly anthropomorphic that you can't walk away from them. Beautiful machine, maybe the most beautiful machines of all machines. So powerful and so, how you say, sensitive or sensible at the same time? Sensitive. I always mix it up. And then you can dress them. This is a shot from the new Ferrari factory in Italy from the spray paint booth. And so you can dress them to give them fancy dress. And I put such a guy on a high pedestal. According to the building, it's a 4-story high pedestal. Oh, wait, I show you what it does. It has a little light in his hand and shines a light around in the evening, completely lost there. A little bit sad, sitting on his pole, not having anything to do besides exploring what it already knows. You can have different views of it. Maybe sometimes it's a little more happy and then it moves more. Cute little guy, shining its light around. Until a passerby comes along. Well, and then he goes back into his normal state. This we're going to realize, I think next year, right? Pretty soon. This is a commission I've got accidentally in a city in South Germany. I went to an Italian restaurant while I was teaching in Karlsruhe, and I was running into a friend who was a movie director, and he was sitting there with the mayor of the city. And he introduced me as the guy who makes artwork with these black and white pixels I did for this Elbe River project. And Mayer said, well, there I might have something interesting for you. We have a plan to build sound absorbing walls all over the place. And are spending a lot of money on it, and they are really, really ugly. And if I can come up with a proposal to make that a better world without increasing the budget, not a single dollar, I get the commission. And it was all engineered, planned, everything was there, was all ready to go. And I knew if I can't increase the budget, it's not worth trying anything. You have to reinvent this whole sound-absorbing wall business from scratch. If you are unlucky, you make it more expensive, then it all goes in the bin. If you're lucky, you can figure something out what might be cheaper than the things on the market. And so I thought about such a horizontal structure, blind structure, because it's all about killing the sound what is emitted by the tires on the road. It's interesting for people who don't know that it's not about the engine. You don't hear the engine. At the speed higher than 40 or 50 miles per hour, it's all about the rubber on the road, what makes the sound. And then having this regular structure, biting it out here and there, skipping some of these plates or louvers, can't be so expensive. That was my thought. And then when I see them in the direct sunlight, they cast a shadow underneath and makes beautiful bitmap graphics, like this. Yeah, so I wanted to have huge portraits sitting in a landscape. That was the plan. We made a physical model of that. That became kind of a beautiful surprise because we found out, oh, look here, that works. And the museum director visited me for another reason next day. And he loved it so much that he commissioned me this artwork just, I mean, he liked it and he wanted to have it. But the other reason was he wanted to give me an opportunity to make a full-scale model of that thing, how to see how it would look on the freeway. Here, a face of a homeless person. And here are the first concrete prototypes of it. So it's all about the shadow it casts underneath, right? This is a 3D rendering of it, and this shows how it changes its ductus over time over the year, right? Just a tiny little bit if I go back and forward. Well, and this is a low resolution rendering because we haven't started yet to build them. And then I did another attempt to visualize with this technique portraits, and I did it with male faces, a casting I did in a jail. They are all inmates because I wanted to have some really strong, not too old man facial expressions. And that shows the making in the gallery. We are converting the picture information into lists with coordinates, and the people are reading the coordinates and then placing the pixels. That we found out is the most efficient way to do this. It still takes a while to put it together. In this case, it actually took very long. A lot of people were working on it. It was almost, it came to a moment where I couldn't feel comfortable anymore to visit them, so I just didn't do it. And then when I came to the very end and they were almost done, then they were so happy. But there was a moment where it had some tension and they were so tired of putting these damn pixels into the thing. And I felt guilty that they had to do this. Here, the video doesn't show the beauty of that thing because of resolution. It's one of my better works, I have to say. So it was a relief all around this huge gallery. The reason why I came to Seattle, beside meeting you, is a meeting we're going to have tomorrow about a glass sculpture I'm doing with Peter together, but we have forgotten where. not far from here. It's a no.
It's at a treatment facility or a pumping station.
Yeah, the whole project is a water treatment facility, huge, billion-dollar operation, and they have one huge pumping plant somewhere in the business park very close to here, but I've forgotten the name of the business. Short, a little strange pronunciation. Maybe 4 characters, the word. You know, everybody knows the place. I've done. Anyway, so this is the building, and I decided to take this part of the building away and replace it with something more vertical, like a lighthouse, or more closer to it like a water tower, because this whole thing is just putting pressure on water, this whole facility, so why not coming with this metaphor of a water tower? Water tower are amazing structures. You can find on the internet thousands of them. People love them. Some of them become then really important orientation points in cities like this one in Chicago. So we want to make a kind of a water tower, but of course it doesn't make sense to put water into this because all the machines who are creating the pressure are inside of the building. So the idea was we're going to deal with water containers. And let's say drinking water containers, you find them in a supermarket in huge quantity, huge variety, all selling the same product, making a crazy competition just of their branding to give you the feeling that there's a big difference between these mineral waters. And then they bottle it in France and they ship it to the United States of America, while probably a ship from the United States of America is on its way to Europe with the mineral water from here and selling it there. It's an interesting thing. The Germans, they have started this insanity with a company called Apollinaris, and they shipped already in 1860 already 5 million of these bottles all over the world. What I love by this picture is if you see the CI of the company, the triangle and the Apollinaris, the written text, it's still the same. Just that the bottles have slightly changed because they go into this crazy design competition who makes the most fancy bottle for its product. And you find really, really fancy bottles if you look long enough. And so we're going to shredder these water bottles, literally 200,000 of them. And Peter found a company in Utah what melts the glass into blocks, then crashes the blocks into rocks, and then they tumble these rocks into these beautiful glass stones. This is a green one, and this is a transparent glass one. And it's a beautiful product by itself. It is exactly the thing you find at the beach sometimes when it's so totally smoothly washed and opaque. And the first rendering of how such structure could look like. And then we built our first prototype in Peter's facility to see it in real. It consists out of a stainless steel mesh on the outside, what holds the gravel back to a perforated, heavy stainless steel sheet material. It's then filled up with the gravel, like here, and then backlit with fluorescent lights. This maybe looks on my computer slightly, no, it's okay. It's not too washed out. Makes a really beautiful structure.
It looks so good.
Yeah. And then we have simple fluorescent lights inside. And just by controlling them slowly, we are able to animate these lights, but will be very, very little animated, almost never change, nothing, so just super little. More in the way, if you see it, let's say 6 o'clock in the evening, and then you come back on your way back at 10 o'clock, it's different, you know. It's not very loud. Well, and before I come to my end, I was actually pretty quick. Before I show you the last thing, I want to introduce it as something you do in a career. You do sometimes things which become successful, sometimes they becomes less successful, just you like them, and then sometimes you fail, or you do something what you don't like. They're all variety. Not very often you do something where you're proud of. And that happened so far only once to me, and this is what I want to show you here at the end. It is a concert I did where I used this facade of the building, what changes color. At that time, 92, a while ago, I turned it into the biggest video projection screen ever built at that time, and I had Oscar Zahler, he's the inventor of the first synthesizer in the world, had him performing on that thing. He opened the Olympic Games in Berlin, 1936, these famous Nazi propaganda games with synthesizer music. He made plenty of soundtracks. Hitchcock, The Birds. If you see the movie again, all these bird sounds are made with this analog synthesizer called Trautonium in the 60s, in 1960. Hitchcock tried it with real birds, then he gave up on it, came to Berlin, and they did that together. So he's an amazing character, the only person in the world who's able to play that instrument called Trautonium. Here it is. And that's what he did his whole life. He was inventing the machine and playing it. And I could convince him to come to play in a little studio for us. We had maybe 50, 80 people audience, but everybody came, Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream, because he's the hero of electronic music. And I projected it in real time with 2 crazy, humongous projectors. I had to rent two office areas on the other side of the street to fit the equipment in, and projected it on the facade. Behind the steel facade, we had the best audio system what was available on the market, what turned the whole street experience like into a chamber music concert. So it was far away from rock and roll, and there he was playing. One of the reasons why Oscar Zahler is not performing live is that this analog instrument has no presets. So that means to go from one composition to the next one takes him up to 20 minutes to adjust his buttons. And I told him, not a problem, we're going to show sequences out of his films to get over this time, and that was actually a very good idea. It was a nice mix. And I show you here one sequence of a film called A Voyage to the Moon. Zahler has amazing contacts to the NASA for historic reasons, and his old friends, they gave him material what was shot on the moon, what all went wrong on the moon, what was never shown to an American audience. And he compiled it to this little movie, and it shows what all went wrong up there. And it's the most beautiful little movie documentary movie I've ever seen, and the music is just amazing. So here in this scene, the astronauts, they are trying to stick something into the ground, maybe to take a sample or whatever, and because of the lack of gravity, it becomes a major problem. There were these rumors that the moon landing was all fake. I mean, you just show this and you know it was not fake. Beautiful. Well, that was it. Thank you very much.